Hello and welcome back to Kaleidoscope the podcast. I'm with my guest today, Hayley Morgan. Hayley and I have known each other now for maybe 6 years. We met in a gym. There was you and me and two other ladies in our little team. One of the girls, Joanne, I think. Do you remember she was a powerhouse? She could lift. My goodness, the stuff she could lift was put us all to shame. But we had great crack for quite a lot of months in that gym back in the day. Um, Kelly, thank you very much for coming along. You've gone on to do, and I have watched your career and your life change over those 6 years. But I don't know what story you're going to tell, and I don't know what you're going to talk about. So I don't want to say too much more. So I'm gonna the four questions, as you know, this podcast is all about change and transformation. So the four questions are: what was life like before the change? What was like during the change? What was life like after the change? And what does the future hold? Not that any of us have a crystal ball, but as far as you hope, what does the future hold? So I'm going to pass it over to you to tell us whichever of your stories you would like to tell.
Yes, thank you, Valerie, for holding this space and allowing us to share our stories. I think that's really, really important, and that is part of now where I am in my journey of my work is holding space for people to allow them to share their stories, and that started. So, what happened before the change? And really, ultimately, my story is around how death encouraged me to start living. I was surrounded by a lot of death and grief in my early 20s. And before the change, I suppose I was sort of a happy go lucky kind of person. I was working what was my dream job. Um, I was a manager. I had wanted this job. I came out of university, got promoted very quickly, and I've always just been one of those people. I just keep going until I get the thing that I wanted, and I kind of got it. I was so stressed. I was probably like a swan because none of my friends or family would have realized where I was at. And in my head, I was thinking, I've got my dream job. Why am I not, thriving? Why am I not so happy in this space? And I was managing a staff team. I was managing four venues. And it was just a space and time of my life that was just really chaotic. I was in a long distance relationship with a fella, and everything just felt stretched, everything felt tight. And then at the time, I lost my paternal grandmother in 2015, the summer, the July 2015. And from there, it just sort of spiraled. I had a really, really good connection with her. My mom and dad were separated basically from birth, and it was my grandmother that made my dad sort of come back. She grew up without a father, and she was like, you need to fight for your daughter and make sure you look after her throughout her life. So I had a really good connection with her, and after she passed, it really, really hit me um quite bad. And that summer, I just, oh my goodness, I spiraled, and it just, it was such a difficult time. And I think looking back, I was seeking anything that was sort of happening. And that time during the change was um a really sort of time of inward healing and a path of self-discovery and learning about myself. And what happened has just been a spiral of events since. So, from what happened that event after Granny passing to where I have come now, has been just this complete journey of opening. And from then, that summer, I had this beautiful moment of seeking out answers and seeking out healing for myself on that journey. And I, at the time, was working in a community, and I was working with community workers, and they used to come around and do outreach with different holistic therapies. And I can remember getting um, reflexology done and Reiki done at the time. I had no idea what these things were. I was literally just going because somebody had said this might be quite good for you. And I was going around getting 30 minutes on my lunch break. And I remember during the Reiki session, my grandmother came through to me, and like she was the most devout, like Christian woman, and I had no idea about spiritual life or anything like that. And she just sort of said to me, we need to work on yourself and whatever. It was a very brief thing, a very brief encounter. And I was like, God, this stuff is mental. Like that was mad, you know. And I sort of went on, and from then I had I went to a sound healing event, and this was the big change for me. And I think at that point I was probably at my lowest, although again nobody would have known. um and I went to this sound healing, and I will never forget this. I wouldn't even know what to call it, a spiritual enlightenment or epiphany or whatever, that caused this change. And this one experience that happened to me has completely changed from then. So when I was during the sound healing, and I actually haven't shared this with a lot of people because I suppose you don't really have the space and time to share it, and even family and friends, but I remember being in the sound healing, and she sort of said, have a focus in your mind for what you want out of the session, before we go into it. And I just thought, I just need to be happy. I need to find happiness again. And during the sound healing, my grandmother came through to me, and one of those experiences that I can only describe when people say, you're never going to believe me. And now when people come in and say that to me, I'm like, try me. She lifted me up, and it was like she was the angel, and she carried me on her wings. And when I say this happened to me, and it was so real, I remember being physically stuck to the floor during the sound healing, and I was like, I am paralyzed, I can't move. And the tears were just streaming down my face. And I remember just being like, oh my goodness. And she showed me, like, I had been at Camp America previous years. She showed me, like, me at Camp America, and she showed me all these things that I had done in my life. And it was like a little journey. And she was showing me her as an angel. And I was on these huge wings. And she was saying to me, you know, you have so many gifts, you need to share them with people, but you also need to make people feel the way that I'm going to make you feel. And it was really like, I remember coming back, and after the sound healing session, it took me ages to like get myself unstuck off the floor. And I sat around this group of women, and you know, they were all chatting about their experience and what had happened, and I just sat there like, and I was so dumbfounded of this experience, bewildered. I was like, did no one else have that? No. And I was like, what has just happened to me? I have no idea. I couldn't wait to get out of the place, because I was like, nobody understands. Like this, they were all talking about like these lovely wee things that had kind of happened or whatever. And a disclaimer, I have been to lots of sound baths since and not had this experience, but um, they are wonderful, a wonderful modality. Um, but yes, I remember after this session, I was like, oh my word. And from then, things just started spiraling. I went, sort of carried on with my journey a little bit, sort of dabbling into modalities and sort of healing. And about 6 months later, my grandfather then was really unwell. He was in the cancer unit in the Macmillan ward. And I was still kind of in the same place where I was. And I was very, very close with him as well, and my grandfather on my other side. And my best friend at the time was leaving to go to Australia, and he just said to me, I know you're not happy. I see you. I've left you money. You're going to go book a plane ticket, and you're going to go, and you're going to leave, and you're going to go out of here. And I was like, right, okay. And I thought, right. So during this time, and all this change was happening, he literally passed away on a Wednesday, and on the Saturday I went in, I booked a ticket, and that's exactly what I did. I booked a one-way ticket and thought, no, I'm going. This is all part of this plan. It has to be. And during that time of me changing and just trusting the world and trusting myself a lot more, and having to listen to that little inner voice and just be like, just do it. So I did. I went into my job, which I did love. And I thought, I'm 25. I'm literally about to have a mental breakdown at this point. Um, and I just thought, no, I can't. You know, there has to be more. There has to be more to this life. There has to be more out there. There has to be more for me. And when he passed, then that's exactly what I did. So I booked the ticket. I went off and did my traveling. And it was really a moment of me taking back control. I went in and I handed in my notice. I left my car. I left my career. I left my relationship, and I took off. I went to Camp America, back to Camp America first, as in order from what had happened with my granny the previous summer, her showing me that. I went back to Camp America. I went to Australia, and I did lots of traveling. And at that time, I was just traveling to understand myself. And I hate that cliche thing when people say, "Oh, you go traveling to find yourself." Um, but it really was a time where you're just having to trust yourself and trust that the people that you meet along the way are there for your best interests, I suppose. Um, and during that time of change was really for the first time I was having to trust myself and listen to myself. And I think as a very much as a child who has come from broken home and mum and dad always, I was dad's the weekends and mum's during the week, you're always just told where to go and what to do, and you're sort of placed around. So this was really the first time at sort of 25, 26, where I am out in the world being like, what am I doing? And really having to think for myself on my own 2 feet. And looking back to it, I was scared in a way, but excited at the same time. Thought, oh my goodness, this is living. I am living. I have nobody telling me what to do, and I am living. And it was just a huge moment of my life. And I remember thinking about the way of life in Australia, and I love the culture over there, and family friendly, and the way of life. And I went to so many yoga things, and just all this whole other sort of side of life opened up. And then when I came home for a family wedding, and my grandmother, my mum's mum, then also got the same cancer that my grandfather had just passed away with, her husband, 2 years previous, and exactly the same. And to this day, I'm telling you, it came from a broken heart, because she was just broke when he left. And I remember sitting with her, and she'd gone through her chemotherapy, and she'd had the cancer removed and everything, and it was supposed to be good and well. And I just knew, I looked at her, and I just knew. She said, please don't go back, please don't go back. And I was like, really, what am I supposed to do? Like, what am I supposed to do in my life? I've given away my career. Like, where am I going now? What am I doing now? Um, and during that time, I was just working jobs because I was home. Couldn't really care. I was like, going back to Australia. And Granny had said to me then, she was like, I don't care what you do. You just need to do something that makes you happy. And I sort of thought back over the last few years and thought, well, what does make me happy? And then I sort of thought back to the epiphany that I'd had with my other grandmother during that sound healing session, and thought, it was that feeling of the being lost and helping to be found again, and how that made me feel, and how she showed me those sort of gifts that I have. And I never thought about being gifted or any of that, I suppose, at that time. And I just thought, well, what do I enjoy? And I did some soul searching around that, and thought, I remember back to those therapies and how much they helped me, and the reflexology at the time. And I'd always been really, really interested in reflexology throughout life. And at the time, I was getting some to help with polycystic ovary syndrome, which I have. And I just thought, well, what if I go and study that? And my wee granny, her face just lit up. She was like, yes, go and do that. I'm paying for that course. That's it. You're going to go and study that, and I'm paying for it. You're staying here. That's it. And I, at the time, was like, all right, granny. It was kind of floating the idea, but I thought, yeah, let's just do it. Let's just do it. See where I end up. And I enrolled in the course, and it became probably the one thing that healed me while I healed others in the same space. And to share that modality has been life altering for me. And that is still in this time of the change of going through all of this space and time with her. So she refused. She didn't want to go back to the McMillan Centre and whatever, and she was just getting sicker. And as I was practicing my case study, she was one of my case studies. And I can remember driving around to a physio who also happened to be reflexology trained. And I was like, well, Granny, how'd you get on at the physio? And she's like, you'll never believe what she did. And I was like, what did she do? Reflexology. I was like, amazing, Granny. It's wonderful, isn't it? So then she became one of my case studies, and she was like, I've told you there's something about this. It's so brilliant. And she's like, if I could have done a career or done something in my life, I would have done this. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And as she became weaker, then I used to do her feet for her, and I used to get her tucked up to bed, and I would rub her feet for her. I'd leave her tucked in, she'd fall asleep, and then I would leave her house and put her key through the letterbox. And at this point, we had lots of chats about life, about feeling anxious, about feeling lost, and and she opened up to me more than probably any of the family members at the time, because we were working through as I'm working on the feet. And I felt like at that time, you're far enough away from somebody when you're working on their feet, but they're relaxed enough that they feel they can open up. And it's this trust and a two-way trust relationship. And she was opening up about things about how she was feeling during life. And I was telling her things, and I told her what happened then with my granny. I hadn't really told anybody about this experience before. And she was just like, that's amazing. I can't wait to meet her if she's an angel in heaven and all this. And it was a lovely conversation that I've never had with anybody, but in such a safe space to open up to each other. So as she was sort of coming to the close and the end of her life, we had such a beautiful relationship, and I can be so thankful for the reflexology that brought us closer together. And in those last probably 3 months, I spent so much time with her, and I will never forget those memories and that time we spent together. And people say I wish I could bring them back for a day, just one day. I don't. I know she's at peace because we had so much time together. And it was the reflexology that brought us closer together. Even literally the day before she passed, I had done her feet for. And it was just amazing. And it was the support and just seeing how that brought her down was wonderful. And I was doing a lot of this work, and I sort of thought I knew she was passing over at the time. And before she passed, I got this really sort of call, and an inner voice sort of saying to me, she needs you to do something. And I thought, what on earth is this? And I went round to her house, and at that point she was in the hospital. I went round to her house, and I was like walking around her house, and I was like, what is it, Granny? What do you need? What do you want? And I looked out to the garden, and I thought, oh my goodness, the grave. And I said, she wants flowers on the grave. So I went out to her garden. My granny had the most beautiful garden of roses, and oh my goodness, they were just divine, huge, big roses she grew. And I went and I chopped all these roses, and I brought them to the grave of my grandfather that had passed previous 2 years. And I'd done the grave all absolutely beautiful, and I was sort of laughing to myself, and I thought, Granny, you wouldn't get in this grave until it was beautiful. And when I went back to the hospital that night, they were saying your granny's sort of passing over and whatever. And there was a point, and she opened her eyes, and she just looked at me and nodded at me. And I thought, mm-hmm. And in about 10 minutes, I knew she had gone, and her soul had just touched me in so many ways. It was an amazing experience to be there. And it was so healing, because when my other grandmother had passed, the 4 years previous to that, her passing was it was sparing all details, but it was very traumatic. It wasn't a nice, quick and easy, beautiful passing. And I remember feeling at that time thinking, uh-oh, and had to do a lot of work around death at that time to help me heal in that space. Seeing her and witnessing her, my granny slipped off so beautifully, gently holding the hands of our family members and everybody around her. And at the time, I remember my mum, she'd had a glass of wine before she got the call down to the hospital. And she said, my grandfather, she said, he's waiting on you. And she just said, I know, I can hear him, I just can't see him yet. And the comfort that brought to us was so amazing. And I remember just sitting on her bed and just holding her feet until literally she had passed and the machine went. And it was just this most beautiful movement. And I thought, I need to give this out to the world. I need to spread this out, because there is so much peace to be given and held in that space. So that time of my life where there was just a lot of passing, a lot of death, and a lot of change, and I didn't know where I was going with this reflexology course. And it was the one thing that probably helped heal me too. With that learning, I met so many beautiful friends, and I remember going to the next class and just being like, ugh. And getting the reflexology that day, I was like, oh, this is so special. It's amazing. So after that time of my life, that was about 2019, and I finished my course probably around when I met you, Valerie. And I was kind of then at that point, I was open to everything. It was like somebody had just opened the book and been like, Hayley, there's so much more out there. And I went to counselling at the time, and I just remember her saying to me, I went in and she was like, tell me about what's going to be going on in your life. And I was telling her, I'd had these 3 passings of my 3 grandparents who I was all very close to. They're a huge part of my life, especially because of my mum and dad separated. They meant more to me than, your normal maybe grandparents that you didn't see very often. I had such deep connections with them all. And she just said to me, Hayley, you're grieving. And just saying those words, and I was like, so I am. And it just, this movement that happened, and I had this huge shift, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's exactly what it was. Why didn't I realize I was grieving? Nobody had said to me, this is what grief feels like, or this is the process that you're going to go through. And all of this timeline had been quite close together, and it was just, in a space where I was just feeling so lost, and I threw myself into every sort of modality going. And I went and trained then in my Reiki and did it. And I remember sitting through my Reiki level 1, and I had all these experiences and all these things. And I was like, do I share them or do I not? Because nobody else is saying the things that I'm saying. And it was just in this little circle, and I could very closely and clearly see my two grandmothers around this beautiful circle. And I thought, oh my goodness, they're my guides, and I have to listen to them. And I just realized that I was so spiritually awoken at that point, and I was so much more aware than most people on the ground. And I felt like I was floating around in this little, sort of my own little planet. The people beside me were like, oh yeah, that was lovely, we meditation. I kind of, seen this and doing this. And I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'm like 3,000 steps above these people. I've like seen colors, I've seen guides, I've seen like this, I see my grandmother's thing. And I was just sitting there like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And it was so bizarre. And the guy that was doing our Reiki training, he reminds me of a Buddha. He's a little small man, he's bald, he's got a little belly, we totally tat, and the lights and everything were flickering, and he was just like, tell me, Hayley. And I was like, well, blah, 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 blah. And I never felt so heard and understood in my life. And probably at that point I'm thinking, this is the first time somebody has actually understood me. And then I told him about what had happened with my grandmother those few years before. And to have somebody just stand in front of you, just be like, yeah, I believe you. And I was like, I've never told anybody that before. And to hear that somebody believes in you and believes your story and believes what happened, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And after that point in my life, when I sort of seek that out, obviously 2020 came around. After all that change, and I then began to open up my business. I thought, I have a call in here. I have to just follow this purpose. I have to follow this plan. And I started my own reflexology business. Just the end of 2019, and then obviously 2020 came, COVID came. And at the time I was running baby classes as well in the community, and I was offered to buy the business. And I was so torn because I thought, oh, what do I do here? And I sort of meditated on it and thought, and I just heard back to my grannies, and no, you need to follow your heart. You need to follow this passion. I thought, okay, you have to share the feeling that you have felt and the feeling that you have felt doing this with my grandmother. She was passing. And it was just that beautiful sort of time that I needed in my life. And I set up the business. And from then, it was quite bizarre. COVID came, I couldn't really do very much. I worked away. And then at the end of sort of 2020, get opened again 2021. I remember being raging because 2020 was my year. I was like determined. I started off, I went to Bali, I went traveling. I was like, 2020 is my year. This is it. It's happening. I was like, I'm manifesting everything. And I knew actually, and my sister actually sent me a photo on the morning of my wedding, because at the start of 2020, I told her I was manifesting my husband that year, and I did meet him in 2020. I definitely manifested him, which is really funny. And you'll listen back and you'll laugh at this. But that year I was like, oh my goodness. So after this sort of, what would it, that have been maybe 5 years of my life of that unraveling, after this series of events, I got the business going, and I started it, and I found that the people that I was calling in, and the people that were coming to me, that sort of, maybe I was putting that energy out and they were coming back to me, were the people that were in that space that I was in 5 years ago. I was bringing in all these women that are attracting all these women that were feeling that same feeling of being lost, and just feeling deflated, and every time somebody was coming into me, and I was just looking at them thinking to myself, I've heard this story, but it was my story in a different way, and it was their story, but there was parts of it that resonated with me so much. And I remember thinking back and thinking, these women just need a space to be heard, to let them unfold their story and to hold, and the power of touch and the healing that that creates for them. And I'm very much still a believer that, you know, you just hold the space and they do the work. And these women, I just get them up in the bed and I'd be like, just keep talking to me. I'll just work away here on the feet. Just keep chatting to me and you know, tell me your story. And you know, I love it. Always ended up being this deep, meaningful conversation. I'm a big fan of a DMC. I'm not there for the little itty bitty small talk. I'm like, get into the chat. Tell me about your trauma. Tell me about your past. How have you ended up here? How have you gotten this journey? And now I find myself at that space where I am the person who says, let's unravel. And from that work, it has ended up, you know, I've done a lot of work on trauma release. I've done a lot of work on trauma mapping. And done a lot of work on the womb space as well. I'm thinking about our lineage and working on womb massage and things like that. So I've traveled even further deeper than that. I helped heal some of my own PCOS and then got pregnant with my own wee daughter, which is just a lovely outcome of everything that has sort of happened. So from there, the healing has completely changed and transformed into this space. And it was just, I remember somebody saying to me, how are you so busy? And I was like, I don't know. I just keep getting busier. So I sort of started around the March, April of 2020 or 2021, I think that was, when you were allowed to see people. And within like a few weeks, I was literally fully booked and I had no idea what was happening. I had this sort of decision. Are you going to leave the baby classes or what are you going to do? And I thought, oh, buy the business or stick with what you're doing. And I thought, no, just stick with what you're doing. So I did. And I left it and I walked away. And I had a wee 1 day admin job and I was hanging on to it and clutching on to it. And I just thought back to that moment of that feeling of my granny, of that lifting me up and feeling that light and everything I come through in those last few years, and thinking of lifestyle in Australia and the culture in Australia, and thinking, if I ever have a children, I don't want to work full time. I don't want to be in an office. I don't want this hanging over me. And I thought, no, I need this freedom. I need to cut this tie. And I remember just going in and speaking to the little admin job and saying, like, I have to walk away from this. I have to just trust in what I'm doing. And I did. And we went on a family holiday. And I was like, I'm going back and I'm going to be self employed and I'm going to do it. That first week, I was fully booked. In fact, I was overbooked. I was booked from 9 to 9 every day, 5 days of the week. And I don't know how this happened, but it was just all this part of this unfolding on the journey. And from there, after this event, the events of life, I've now helped a lot of women. And as I say, I get the same type of women. I attract the same type of women who are at that space, and I hold that space for them. We work through things. Someone comes into me and, you know, they'll say, I don't know what I want tonight, or I don't know what I need tonight. They're my favorite clients. They come into me and I'm like, great, let's do a Hayley special. Let's figure it out. Let's unravel. Let's see what happens. And from there, you know, I've went on and unfolded, and my journey has just, it keeps going. And so I trained as a doula recently, supporting a lot of my journey, my clients, female clients, on fertility journeys and through the process of IVF and on through pregnancy. And I was finding that that space was just rolling on. I was supporting these women for maybe a few years on their fertility journey. They were getting pregnant, they were coming back to me postnatally, and then postnatally all the trauma was happening again. So that thread was remaining. So I was going back to trauma release work. I was going back to trauma work, postnatal work again with them. And that training as a doula then has been the last little piece of my puzzle, I suppose, that I've put together. And I think when I look back at sort of 2020, 2019, I'm like, oh my goodness, how much have you grown and changed in that time? And what has happened as an outcome from that series of passing, of death, of trauma of my own life. And looking back, and I think to myself, wow, you know, you have started living and finding your path, your purpose, and enjoying what I do. And I don't work full time anymore, and I am there for my little daughter and my family and able to support them. But that sort of has been a huge part of who I am, and discovering who I am and realizing that I have a purpose and a passion from what has happened. And like most people, you know, we have to be broken to heal. We have to have lost to be able to love again and to truly understand that. And we have to have lost to also enjoy and live life to the fullest. and really embrace it. And I feel like every client that comes into me now, I really do, I see through them, I see underneath them, I see through the lines, I hear between the lines. And sometimes it is just about allowing them to sit there and vent and, get things off their chest. And that power of touch and holding the space for them, I will never get over how amazing that is and how healing that has been for me on my journey. And to be able to give that back to somebody, it has been so transformational for me and for lots of my clients that I have had in. And I have had now hundreds of women go through fertility journeys who have ended up pregnant. And, it's maybe an emotional blockage, a mental blockage, some sort of trauma that has been stored there, and we have worked on it. And they come back to me and, within a few weeks, they're pregnant, but it was that space and time of unraveling that has helped them to release a lot of the things that they've been holding on to. I've done a lot of reading about the body holds the score and keeps the score and things like that, and where we hold our trauma and where that is. So all of the work that I'm doing, body work, somatic work, breath work, touch, Reiki, healing, all of the things, all of the modalities that I use, that I have used, that have helped me, I'm passing that on. I'm passing it on to my clients, and I'm passing it on to future generations as well. But it is beautiful and in that space, and it just shows you where the journey can bring. So it's just that every journey has a lesson or brings a blessing to you. And finally, I think the last part of that is the future, and where does the future hold, or what's happening in the future. Future wise is that I've just recently trained as a doula, so I will be supporting more of my mums through that journey. I've been at 2 births already, which has been transformational. It's been amazing. I love that work. I love welcoming a new soul into the world. I think there's nothing more beautiful than being there and really being there for mum, and being with her in that space. And it was a full circle moment, because the first birth I was at was a girl that I met during my reflexology course. And I didn't know that 6 years later I'd be supporting her and being by her side in her birth. And during that, what did I do? Obviously rubbed her feet the whole way through labour. And the midwives were like, oh, this is amazing. But I used all of the techniques that I had trained in and that I have used over the last sort of 6 years. And we had the rebozos out, we did a bit of massage, we did a bit of Reiki, we had aromatherapy going. We had the most beautiful space in her birthing room. It was just, everybody kept coming in and being like, wow. And I was like, I know, isn't it lovely in here? And it was just so transformational. And I thought, this is a full circle moment from me starting that reflexology course to where I am now. And here I am at this doula, as a doula, supporting this mummy to welcome her 4th baby into the world. And it was just one of those moments where it was like, I feel like I can close that book now. So I feel like for the future, I'm excited for the future, because I feel like this big chapter has been closed, and I'm now just present. I'm here. I'm in this space, and this is who I am now. And it has taken that time to unravel, to learn about myself, and to just be here and enjoy where I am at the minute. So future wise, I'm excited, because that book is closed, and now I'm ready to open up the next book. I hope to do a little bit more teaching. I love doing courses. I'm running women's retreats now as well, and gathering more women together in that space. So I'm very excited for the future, and I'm so thankful and grateful for that journey that has got me here, because I do think back and think, had I not have been 24, 25 hitting a mental breakdown, I probably would still be there. I'd be in that job, I'd be in that role, I'd be climbing that career ladder, and just I would be so sucked out, just depleted, and probably would have had the breakdown at 25. So I am so grateful for all of that unfolding. Obviously, a huge part of my heart is missing with all the passings and the deaths and all of that as well. But I am so grateful for each one of those that has helped me understand me more, and understand that life is there to be lived, and we have to enjoy it and take it all from it. So it has been quite the journey to getting to where I am now. And that's my little story.
It has indeed. And a couple of things that I picked up on there, the sound healing. So one of the things that I teach anybody that will listen to me is that everything is vibrational, everything is energy, and energy vibrates. So when we get into a sound healing space, it is so much easier to connect to the other realm, because if you allow yourself to go with the vibration, because then you're getting all the same vibration as the other realm. So I love the experience that you had, and it makes so much more sense. But it is about that allowing,
Yeah. And
rather than, for
definitely,
a lot of us.
yeah, I think it's because I was so low at that point. I just lay there like this, like I'll go to anything if it's going to help me. So because I think I was so open, it came at me times 100. You know,
Yeah,
I felt
that,
every vibration.
yeah. So my word for this year is surrender. And when we surrender to, then we are taken to where we need to go. Whereas a lot of times, for a lot of people, their humanness is a bit
Yeah,
of a barrier. It's a bit of a block. Their ego and their the human vessel gets in the way of being uplifted to that other place. You're finding happiness, that I remember during my breakdown and like, strangely, you're like the third or fourth person I've talked to that it all started in around 2018. For me, it was 2018. And I remember Googling, will I ever be happy again?
Mhm.
And that's really scary, that actually there are so many people going through that at any one time, that
Yeah.
if you put into will I into any search engine, but it will come up, it will finish the sentence, be happy again.
Yeah.
That's how many people are going through what we would call in our training the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
Um, and it is a horrible place to be. And I think for people like you and me, the we understand that some people have to go there, because you're quite right. It's only when something breaks that the light gets in.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to completely break the expectations of everybody else that are placed on us. We'll be a good girl, we'll be a civil servant, and it's only when we break all that we find ourselves a bit like those Russian dolls. When we take all the weight of expectations inside, in the middle is this tiny, tiny, and that's us. That's the real us.
Your core.
Um, so we kind of understand, but if we can reach in and bring you through that
Yeah.
with our modalities a bit easier,
Yeah.
bit quicker, a bit more understanding, seeing that you're going through that, we're absolutely going to be there for you. So that really resonated for me. I love that you said about the grieving, that it was the counselor that told you were grieving, because for me, I, it's just one of my things with the modalities that I do. There is not enough talk of death
Yeah.
or grieving. And I think the thing is that we can't, in the same way that I can't tell you how you're going to find happiness,
Mhm.
because I love going to the beach. I love putting my feet in the sand. I love the smell of the air and the sound of the waves and everything else. You might absolutely hate the beach.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't tell you what happiness feels like. So equally, I can't tell you what grieving feels like.
Yeah.
But I can tell you what grieving felt like for me. And in that story, you might find bits that resonate. But if we don't tell our stories of grief and grieving, then some people are left with feelings like you were having, and not understanding that that is a natural part of the process. And I have not found, and I love to be contradicted by whomever, but I have never found any modality, I'm a reflexologist. I do tapping. I do hypnotherapy for PTSD. I I do hold healing circles. I do Reiki, Usuri, angelic, mostly Mary Magdalene. Um, I have never found a quick way through grief.
No. I
Grief
don't.
is one of those things that there's no
No.
um
And I think grief changes you. And what I have picked up from there's a lovely client of mine who is in mind, because we were speaking about this very recently. I was saying to her, we do all this preparation for birth. We don't prepare for death. Birth changes you just as much as grief, and death changes you, but we don't give it the same attention.
yeah,
And Nobody can also tell you how you're going to change after you give birth or what that process is going to do, but nobody can tell you what you're going to change and what the process of death is also going to do for you when you lose somebody close to you. Um, and she is working in the Macmillan Centre, and she was saying that she's thinking about training as a death doula to help support people through that, transition. She sees it all
Yeah,
day.
all day. Yeah.
Um, and she was saying, I really feel this. I feel so deeply connected to it that, more people need to be emotionally prepared for that, and they don't. We don't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because we were both coming from similar ideas, and I'm talking about birth and she's talking about death, but it was equally as transformative, because also I think after birth, and what I had found, that postnatal era is just like grief, because nobody can tell you and nobody can help you to really get through it. There's tools, but you get through it in your own way, and everybody feels it differently. The same as grief, you feel it differently, and birth changes you just as much as death, and that grief changes you. So it's just collectively, just as you say, that we were having those conversations there very recently, and as you say, nobody can do it for you, and nobody can, there's tools absolutely that help it, as you say, to pull you through the little dolls quicker, but you have to go through it yourself and come out and
Absolutely.
allow that light back in
Yeah.
yourself, and want the light to come back in too. I think that's what
Yeah.
is, you have to want to allow yourself, will I be happy again, do you want to be happy again, and that's one of the bigger things.
Yeah. Yeah. And for some people, the answer is no.
Hmm.
Right,
Hmm.
right now, for whatever reason, no, because the grief feels like I'm honoring
Yeah.
my person that has moved on. And yeah,
Hmm.
that's okay. So I will then sit with you
Yeah.
in this grief. Shortcut was the word I was looking for. There is no shortcut through grief as far as I can see. Um, and I smiled when you said about your friend training, possibly training as a death doula. I hadn't really heard of death doulas, and you're the second person to mention it in this last week. So that must be the next wave that's coming, is people, because you're my second birth doula that I've interviewed for the podcast.
Yeah.
So this must be the next wave that's coming, is the death doulas are coming, because, and from that one I heard of a thing where people choirs, and there isn't one in Northern Ireland. There's one going to say County Wicklow, but I stand to be corrected. Choirs that sing you on your way, and I'm like, oh, I want one of those.
Come
I want one of those.
off that, you know? Imagine that.
Isn't that lovely?
Again, like when I did my doula training, I met this beautiful lady from America, Hope Menford, and she drums and sings at people's births. And I'm like, what a way to welcome a baby into the world! What a way to leave the world, you know?
Absolutely,
Class,
absolutely,
both.
fantastic. I think it's brilliant. Choirs that sing you to your sleep. And then you mentioned, by the way, just in case people haven't gone back, the other doula was in series one, but just in case nobody's ever listened to that before, what is a doula?
Oh, what is a doula? Open-ended question. A doula is a. I was just actually going to say, on my training, was there 8 women? Not one of us is doing the same thing. A doula is somebody that is there to support you through that time, whatever that looks like. So as I'm saying, that girl wants to do death doula. There's a girl that wants to do breastfeeding doula. There's a girl that wants to do postnatal doula work. There's one who wants to do active birth, a bit like myself. Someone who wants to do campaigning for doulas for birth rights. You know, a doula or postnatally who just come into the home to help mum. It's just having that person, and that is the easiest way I can put it, is that person that you trust to listen to you, respect your needs, and do what you need at that time. Just be totally present with you and help you work through whatever it is that you need to work through. Who's open, honest, listening to you, reliable, and somebody that you can just vent if you need to, or that goes and looks up the support that maybe would be able to help you. And I suppose in what we have been talking about, a doula is that person who helps pull you through those little phases a little bit easier, because they're your person. And I think for me, going as a birth doula, I sat through 7 midwifery changes in that weekend of birth. I was there the whole time. I was with mum not the midwifery staff that she had met for 5 minutes, who you're quickly reading through her notes. They don't know her. They don't know her needs. They don't know her personality. And it's, you're their person. You're their lobster. And you're there for whatever they need. So a doula is a person that you bring into your life to help you through that stage, to help you through that transition, to be there for you completely. And that's as simple as I can put it, because there's so many different variations of what a doula is. But it's your person.
Brilliant. And then when you were talking about reflexology, you talked about, I do reflexology and I didn't recognize this word, robosos, robosos,
Herbozos, yeah.
robosos.
Those are Mexican rebozos. So they we use them through womb massage, and I bring them into birth as well. So they're hand woven, won't be like long scarves, but they're extra thick, extra wide. They're wrapped around the body. So we do things like closing the bone ceremony. So that's after birth. We close the bones, and the mum is wrapped. We weave through, sift through the bones basically, and the whole idea is you're bringing everything together after the soul has left the body, and you're closing in the bones. So you tie the rebozos all around the whole body, and it closes everything in. I have done that ceremony with women through menopause, through grief, through change. It is so transformative using the rebozos. There's so much, they are steeped in history, and they are just an amazing tool to add to your work. But in birth as well, they're really helpful. Would use them around the bump to help loosen up the pelvis, to give mum a bit of support around the back. You're using them around the bum to help with the pain as well. Pain management, they're an amazing tool. They are, oh, they're fab. Needs to be more rebozos. I try to add them into my therapies wherever I can, because I know how good they are, even if it's a head wrapping. And I will do that. I've created a lovely treatment called escapology, which is a blend of all the reflexologies: facial, hand, arm, and feet. And then you're wrapped with the rebozos, and it's just that you're escaping the world for 10-15 minutes as you're wrapped at the end of the session. And everybody says to me after, it's just like the butterfly coming out of the cocoon, because you're just like, wow, it is, they are beautiful, beautiful.
Like the butterfly.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is why that's why my coming through the dark night of the soul and coming out as the butterfly the other side. That's exactly why. And the name Kaleidoscope is a collection of butterflies. Beautiful. Thank you very much. I'll be looking that one up when I come off this call. So Hayley, as I said in my email whenever I invited you on the podcast, I finished with 3 questions. You do not have to answer all 3. You can pick one, whichever floats your boat. But it would be your favorite book, your favorite phrase, or your what you would tell your younger self.
Books I've read way too many, so I can't pick a favorite. Way too many. Phrase, one thing that I say, and I say to a lot of my clients, is send them love, send them on. And I use that a lot in my life. Send them love, send them on, because that's a them problem, not a you problem. And that has been the foundation of probably a lot of the chats I've had with women in my room, is holding on to other people's ideas, other people's emotions, other people's views, opinions. So we just send them love, send them on. And I have used that many, many times. So that is a phrase that comes out a lot. Something I would say to my younger self probably would be that, as I think I said earlier, you have to really have lost to be able to appreciate love, and you have to have been broken to heal. And that this journey is a lesson or a blessing. It's everything happens for a reason. You will either learn something or you will be blessed with something. So you will get through it, is what I would definitely say.
Brilliant. Brilliant. You see, that's why I asked the 3 questions, because I'm a bit like you. My favorite book is usually what I'm reading right now, which unusually for me, I'm reading an autobiography, and it's Oh Miriam. And yes, it's really quite funny. I'm really, really quite enjoying it. So yes, I would be like you. If somebody says to me, "What's your favorite book?" I'm like,
No.
Winnie the Pooh, because I'm going to go back to childhood, or
Yeah.
God, I've got to quite.
What's in
I'm
my
going to go.
obviously my daughter's 2, and I'm like, all I'm doing is reading like children's books at the minute. So, we're reading like Spot the Dog. I'm like, she's repeated the horse book, every night. So I'm like, there's too many. I've read so
Too
many.
many, too many. But there are some people who have a book that is their go-to that they read like over and over again throughout their lifetime. I'm not like that.
Yeah.
Very rarely. Hayley, thank you so much. It has been lovely to catch up with you. I'm so in awe and impressed with what you have gone on to do with your life since we worked together. And I think it was 2019 we were at the gym before the world.
Yeah.
And we all had to do that. The world that
Yeah.
had to happen. I know people are like, oh, whatever. That period, as much whether we liked it or not, had to happen. Um, Thank you so much for coming on and allowing me to chat with you today. I really appreciate it. You will send me your links so that if anybody wants you for reflexology, escapology, um, in the best sense of the word, you're not Houdini, doula work or whatever, they can find you, and
Yeah.
I'll post them with this in the usual places.
Thank you very much, Valerie. It's been lovely for you to hold the space for me to share my story. So thank you very much. And thank you for your work that you're doing as well. Thank you.
Thank you, darling. Thank you. Take care. Bye.